Okay, so today we will be
यूट्यूब पर करो.
yeah, no, I know. આવી ગયું ને
Hmm.
live.
Done. Done.
Yeah. Okay, so today we'll be seeing a game between Botvinnik and Boleslavsky. This was played in Moscow in 1941. Okay, so here Botvinnik was white and black was Boleslavsky. So let me select the game. Let's say, um, let me create a new one. Let's say Botvinnik lectures. Let's say lectures. Yeah, sure. We can put all the games in lectures and say Botvinnik, Mikhail Botvinnik, and बोलेस्लावस्की बोलेस्लावस्की का पूरा नाम क्या है स्लावस्की you remember we had studied one game of Boleslavsky some days back, the knight on d5, you know, the outpost game.
Outpost, yes.
uh, so Botvinnik was playing against the same guy, Isaac Boleslavsky, and so this is one of the great Botvinnik games, you know, I can say, and it's notable for the originality of its opening strategy. So opening strategy is very commendable here, and it was all Botvinnik's home preparation. You know, you can say up till move 14 or 15, Botvinnik was in his home preparation, and this was the era, you can say, of 1940s, where player were not playing on their natural turf, but they were actually doing home preparation, and the main pioneer was Elikhen started the this concept of home preparation. Like he studied the openings, and this was actually much made popular by Botvinnik, this concept. And there are other things also which Botvinnik did for chess, like he introduced the concept of taking care of your health. If you are a good chess player, you also need to have a good health, and a very strict regimen he used to follow, like on his timings, in his like what time to eat and what time to sleep, and how much the book, like if you are reading a book, then your book should be at a particular distance, you know, and then only you should read, otherwise your eyes will get spoiled. That is what Botvinnik told to his daughter once. So so you can like imagine what kind of person Botvinnik was. And this actually game is also a good study for rook and pawn ending, you know. And it is like this game, if you study it well again and again, your rook and pawn endings will also improve. Okay, like but the main thing is that it's a very crystalline, simple winning process. That was what was seen in this game, and it is a step by step. This game accumulates small advantages and then he wins. So you can say just like Capablanca style. So Botvinnik started with e4. Borisovsky take the French defense e6. Then normal moves of French defense d4 and d5. And Botvinnik played the, I think this is the Tarrasch system. So he played this move, and this was fashionable that way. And so what happens to happen is that Botvinnik also played this gizmo also, you know, and there is a problem that the bishop will pin that this knight, you know, and so this has the advantage that if now the bishop comes, then you have this to take shoo away the bishop, and you are also protecting this pawn from here, so that's okay. Now Boleslavsky played c5, attacking the d4 pawn. Now, if you remember that your in French defense as well as the Queen's Gambit, The black's main target is this pawn, d4 pawn, and he starts the attack. Anyway, so Botvinnik played pawn takes pawn, and Boleslavsky played king takes pawn. So he went for some kind of an exchange tarash, you can say. Like he tried to play the tarash, but now he is in the exchange variation. The only problem with the exchange, like there are advantages also of the exchange variation. That now, if suppose he takes this, but he should not take this, maybe. So the advantage is that. Uh, it simplifies the game a bit. Like if you say this is like a bit of a very close game, it tries to simplify the game. It opens some files. It opens this file, and the advantage disadvantage is that this bishop go comes out of this captivity. And there is one more move given, like let's say you take it by queen. No, then what happens? Like if you take it by queen, by nothing, like he has to just develop, no? And if now taking this, like if black thinks that he can earn a pawn here, then he's mistaken. Like he can play bishop c4. Now the queen has to come back because there are no good squares. This will be a mistake to put the king and queen on the same diagonal, and there can be some tactics which Botvinnik can play. So he comes there, and now he can surround the pawn like this. All right. But let's say if he goes this, then also this pawn is lost if you count the number of attackers. So that's why queen q knight knight 3, and let's say he plays this move, and then he can very well just castle, and this pawn he still cannot be protected. He cannot put the bishop here because of this knight. All right. Next one, you there?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So Borisovsky played e takes d5, bishop to b5, check, knight b3. So this is forced. King knights b3, supporting this pawn. Bishop to d6, castle. Knight to e7, pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, and now knight takes. So now you see advantage of this opening is that now this black's pawn is an isolated pawn. This is the advantage. Knight b3. Now he goes back. Bishop knight 3, and now Botvinnik plays a remarkable move. Like we have been told not to put your like make your pawn isolated, but Botvinnik actually breaks that concept of strategies. Like so, these players, so, they can actually think beyond the general moves. So he plays bishop to e3, fully knowing that if bishop takes bishop, then there will be pawn takes bishop. But Botvinnik reasoning is that if this is taken, then my rook is having more space. Like he can hit on f7, which is the weakness in the black's camp, and also he can support a knight here, by putting it here. So this both knights are ready to put on d4. So that's the reason it's a remarkable move. So now bishop takes bishop. So black takes it. Like he finds that black finds that Botvinnik will have an isolated pawn here, and there is nobody to take care of this pawn. So he senses an opportunity here, and he captures it. All right. Okay, but here Botvinnik doesn't capture the bishop straight away. Right. He will. He first gives this check. Yeah. Okay. And now there are two options. There are two options. Let's say he takes it with the knight. If he takes it with the knight, then Botvinnik can simply place it here, pinning the bishop once again. If this pin bishop is being protected by this, still he can place knight cut pawn, and still he can win the bishop. There is no way to protect this bishop. And after that, if he plays pawn takes bishop. Black played pawn takes bishop. So now, if you see, uh, and now he played pawn takes bishop. So Botvinnik readily accepts a weakness of the isolated pawn in exchange of some benefits. What are the benefits? This square, and this square. They both are available for white now. Hello, Nikshan, you are on mute.
I keep muting because I'm coughing a lot. So
Okay, okay, okay. So yeah, momentarily just say yes so that I know that you are not dropped out of the call.
okay, okay.
Okay. All right. So pawn takes bishop. He takes and Botvinnik accepts a isolated pawn. Now let's see what happens. He takes castle. White plays his queen out so that to connect the rooks. Black comes here. He is hitting this pawn and he also prevents white from this moving his knight because this pawn will be in danger. Now Botvinnik wishes that I should be stopping black from playing c5. Otherwise it will create problems. In order to stop c5, he moves queen to c3. Okay, so black cannot play this move c5. He's stopping that thing and he gets the hold of c5 square and d4 square, which he can put one knight here and he can put he can put one knight here and another knight here. So both the squares he can occupy with his knights. And those both are, you can say, outpost, because this knight, if it is here, then this knight cannot be dislodged. Okay, if there is a setup like this, so this knight will be strongly like looking into the black's camp, and it will be a strong outpost. This square. Okay, so now black actually tries to accumulate force on the b2 square, and it temporarily prevents this move. Otherwise it will be queen takes pawn. So Botvinnik places the rook here. Reason being that this pawn is now protected by a queen, but it also needs one protection by a rook. So that's why black cannot attempt queen takes pawn because of rook takes queen. That's why. So he proceeds a rook protection. Now black develops his another rook, and white also develops his another rook. And this also means that the queen is no longer in its duty to protect this pawn, and this responsibility is now being assumed by the rook. All right. So black develops his knight, and he makes further pressure on white's weakness, which he has readily accepted by himself. So black says that okay, you have accepted a weakness, but I will try to take advantage of it by putting some pressure on it. Also, you can see that this is a pinned, this pawn. So more or less, Botvinnik will have to play a move like King H1 to come out of this pin. So black aim is to establish aim strongly in the center, and where it will have some neutralizing effects on the position. So you can see that another of his move is like he can play this move also, and try to come in back into the center with knight f4. Anyway, so Botvinnik places a knight here because now he can place his knight here. There is nobody to stop him. There is no black bishop also. Bath is already exchanged. The reason he's choosing dark squares is because the dark square bishop has been exchanged and he can actually do that. He can plant his knight on a dark square. Okay, so after this, white tries to bring his bishop. Sorry, the black tries to bring his bishop, and he exits this. He thinks that I will like put some pressure here, and maybe I will take it because like I will stop him from coming here. But it's too late. Like Botvinnik takes the another post also. So Botvinnik now has two thing, and now white can no longer play, black can no longer play knight f4 because this is no longer pinned. There are two knights standing in between. So, but as you now know that after the what was the like there is advantage and disadvantage of each move. If you say the advantage is that he occupies this d4 square, which is always very crucial in French defense as well as the in Queen's Gambit decline. And but he lets go hold of this square, because right now black cannot attempt knight e5 because both this knight and this queen are looking at this square, and there is only one rook which is protecting, so he can very well take the knight. Okay, but after this move he can very well play knight to e5. I hope you are getting it, Nixon.
Hmm. Yes. Yes.
Okay, okay. Now to solidify further, what should Botvinnik do here? To solidify his positions of dark square. What should he do? Tell me. What should Botvinnik play to make more dark squares to him?
To make more dark squares.
Yeah, more dark square weaknesses in black's camp, like or to solidify his hold on the black squares. Okay,
He can go b4.
yes. So he went b4, right? So he went b4, and now white is now firmly entrenched on the black dark squares. But this is not enough to assure a victory. There is a strategic victory, you can say, but it is not enough for a victory. He must now find a way to open lines for his rooks without allowing his opponent too much freedom. Right. Now, black plays to d1, and Botvinnik breaks free with e4. So this happened. Pawn takes pawn, rook takes pawn. And now, as this square, this rook is now no longer protected by this rook, black senses an opportunity here. He possesses this pawn because although this square was not available before, because if you see this way, like this is like gone, like pawn takes pawn, and there is nothing left for black to do. This pawn is protected by the queen. This rook is also protected by this rook. But now after the exchange, black got this opportunity to play this. Botvinnik simply solidifies the b4 with a small move a3. Alright, black plays this move and Botvinnik recaptures with a pawn. Now black plays pawn to b3. Okay, so here the white thought that there are some threats. The black thought that there are some threats happening. Let's say Botvinnik plays next move, or move like this, and he attacks. Let's say I enter a null move, and then he attacks this in this way, attacking this knight as well as this bishop. So in order to prevent this tactic, black played f6. All right. So Botvinnik senses that there is a weakness on this square. The knight cannot move out of this square if I double my rooks here. If I double my rooks, now the knight cannot move. All right. The knight cannot move. Otherwise, if it move, then cut, 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 and rook will minus rook. Okay. So it will be dreadful. Also, by this move, he has opened a diagonal for the queen. No? So black prevents this with division. Now here, as per Botvinnik, black shouldn't have played this move. He instead should have played a move like bishop to h5. Okay, and then he should have followed with a move like bishop f7. Now, if the intent was to stop white from using this diagonal, then this would have been a better choice. Here, the bishop is not doing much. Also, by putting here, you are denying white to use this e6 square for his knight. Right now, he can use the e6 square for the knight. Okay, so king h8. Now, as I told you, if white needs to make any use of his knights here, he cannot move both of his knights because of the pin. Okay, now Botvinnik wants to move his knights, so he places king to h1. He goes away from there. Okay, now black can go wrong in many different ways. Let's say next one. Now pay attention. Rook
हाँ जी.
to d5. Okay, now how can white win here? If he plays rook d5,
Rook takes bishop, knight. Sorry. Rook takes bishop, knight takes bishop, rook takes rook.
yeah. So he cannot play that move. It will be a mistake. If black plays this move, he goes back. Okay. Then white has knight to h4. Okay. Attacking this pawn. But this pawn is still protected by this knight. But the queen is also under attack. So he just moves the queen to queen rook 3. Maybe he is also eyeing this square. Now black has a combination. White has a combination. Can you spot the combination? He can play queen takes pawn.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. What will happen if knight takes queen?
What will...
Same, right?
Again,
Rook
I'm
takes
back rank mate
back
again.
rank
Yeah.
mate, right? So he cannot play knight takes queen. Let's say he plays queen takes queen, knight takes queen, and now he's a pawn up, right? One, two, three, four, 1, 2, 3. So he's a pawn up. So that's the reason if black plays a this kind of move where he doesn't want to disturb any rhythm of the position, or maybe needs to take control of the square, then Botvinnik had this variation in his mind and this combination because e8 is weak. Anyway, let's say he plays this move now. It's a bit late now to play this move. It was better on move 24, but on move 25, it is showing that it's not good. So on this way, you can play k6 and attacking the rook. Let's say the rook moves and goes hit here. Then we have sacrifice. Rook takes knight. And if now pawn takes rook, if he wants to other like give up a knight, then for free, then he can take but he has to do something. Like now queen takes pawn, and there is an attack on this pawn, mate threat, as well as attack here, you know. So he has to give up the his own rooks to stop that. And now again same. Okay, and that is how it is. Like if he has to prevent this, let's say by preventing this, then he has to give up his bishop. So black chose to play bishop to d7. Botvinnik takes the bishop. Knight takes bishop. Rook takes knight. Again, he still cannot take this because of the same rook e8 mate threat. So he has to take it with the rook. And now again Botvinnik can play this sacrifice of queen because of now he cannot take it with the queen with the knight because mate threat, right? And now he's threatening the rook as well as the queen. So Bondarsky plays. So now you can say that he's now a pawn up after this combination. So Bondarsky goes back and puts more pressure on this knight. That I will take your knight. So knight goes back, knight to f3, and Boleslavsky plays rook to c7. Now the queen is under attack, right? Still, like Botvinnik played another combination here. No, like after this combination, he will be a pawn ahead in the rook ending. So this combination went like this. He didn't like saved his queen. He played knight takes knight. All right.
हाँ जी.
So Boleslavsky did not accept it. He played pawn takes knight. But let's say if he had accepted it, what would have happened? So if he had accepted it, then rook takes c6. Then we could have knight f7 check, king knight 1, knight takes
Knight
queen,
takes queen.
rook takes knight, and now this pawn is under attack. So he will move this pawn. He tries to like if he goes somewhere else, then he will take this pawn. So he attacks the rook here on the fourth rank. But white has simply rook to before, and he has a good endgame. So he has two pawns on other side, the queen side, which is good enough to win the game. Okay, but let's say he uh, instead, if he had taken with the rook, this is another variation. If you had taken with the rook, then you simply play rook takes rook. Now pawn takes rook, and then queen to e4. And this is also winning for white. But let's say assume that we don't take it, but we choose this, then same will apply. All right. So these were the combinations, and after this, this is not working. Okay. Sorry, this was played, but this is not working because of the inferior. Like this pawn is also gone now, and so this is a very bad position for black. If he taken the taken the queen, that would also have been bad for black. But Boleslavsky played f takes e5. Now let us see what happened in the game. So here Botvinnik played another combination. He played queen takes rook. No, sorry, not this rook. He played this rook. Queen takes rook. Check. Did you spot the combination? What is it? Why he played queen takes rook?
Yeah,
So after taking,
he forced an exchange.
now,
The queen will be stuck on the back rank for a while.
yeah,
Because
because of the
if he
back
creates
rank,
a
he was able
breathing
to do
room,
that. Now he has
yeah,
to compulsorily, he cannot come here. He has to compulsorily go this way. All right. What will happen if he goes to the other way? It will be mate, right? Queen
mate.
8. That's why it will be a mate,
Mate.
right? So that's why he has to compulsorily go the other way. Queen to g8. And Botvinnik played simple move, rook to e8. Taking back what he had given on loan, he had given his queen on loan on move 30. He will take it back on move 33. Anyway, black senses an opportunity to earn a pawn here, so he does that. And instead of 2 pawns down, he's 1 pawn down. And Botvinnik finishes the queen, and he takes the queen back. And he also pushes the rook behind the pass pawn. Like this will now start running the pawn. So the rook belongs behind the pass pawn. Whenever you have a pass pawn, you should be putting a rook behind it, not in front of it, because your pawn goes in front, and so your rook can support him from behind, right? When it also with every increase in step, this pawn's power will increase. It will be more powerful, and it will be more. Black will be have to deal with it, that powerful pawn. So to deal with this powerful pawn, he has to use both his king and rook, and so that he does. And Botvinnik places the pawn ahead. King e6, pawn is e6. So the pass pawn will keep the black's king and rook occupied. In the meantime, like this, both people are occupied. White should bring his own king and near to this pass pawns, and he should try to take these 2 pawns while his king is occupied in this location. Now Boleslavsky has to go back. He cannot wait one more move, or else this will come here and he cannot stop the pawn. So he has to go back. All right. Now here, um, Botvinnik didn't play directly to g7. I will show you the variation, one of the variations that he had calculated, but he simply made some way for his king. Now, as you know that if he comes to g3 by without disturbing his pawn structure, then it will 1, 2, 3 squares. But right now he can afford to do that. He can place the pawn here, and then he can come out here from here. All right. So what would have happened if Botvinnik had played directly to b7? The only move, rook b8. Now let's say he plays king g8. the king goes, king and queen, king and rook both goes that location. King b2, king b2. Sorry, king c7, king knight 3. That means king g3. He can take the pawn. Takes. Now king b4, king b3. Now you see that this king is more nearer to the enemy pawns, and this is much more farther, you know. But he comes here, right? He doesn't allow white to go inside, and take anything. So this will be more or less a draw because white can come back on time. So Botvinnik plays a move which gives his king some air and to come out. So that when this exchange happens, his king should not be stuck here, but it should be on a better place than what it was currently in this variation. So this variation allowed black to come back on time, but he prevents this now. So now he goes here, but when he moves the king further ahead, so his main intent is to go to e5, no? And now black's main intent is to go near to this pawn and take it. King g3 or e5 or maybe h5, like he wants to come near to the pawns as much as near as possible. Now king to c6 and king to knight 4. And now Boleslavsky thinks that I should not be occupying, like if I take this, then of course I'm losing. My king is too far and his king is too near, like then he will lose. Okay, so let's say he goes here. What when he takes, now take this, and now he cannot, like the king will come near to the pawns and he will lose. So Boleslavsky is not interested to take the pawn. Instead, what he does is that let me block with the king and I will take out my rook and do some activity. I will harass the king and many things I can do. So that's a good defense, by Boleslavsky. So so Botvinnik now thinks of a different plan. Like he says, okay, take the pawn, you know. But
Hmm.
Boleslavsky knows that he cannot still take the pawn. Why, Why he still cannot take the pawn? Let's say he takes the pawn. Then check,
Then king gets to both of his pawns.
and now king comes to e6. Okay, and he cannot prevent it. Now both the pawns are gone. So that's why when he played this, Botvinnik had this ending in mind. Okay, okay. Now another, that was one reason. Like, but Botvinnik doesn't believe in small tricks and gimmicks. He had some other plan also in his mind. The other plan was I will protect this pawn from e6. Now that is what he plans to do. He plans to put cement his on e6. Okay, okay. And another thing is that there is one more threat. Like he can put, let's say I enter one null move, and he can say rook to e7 check, king takes pawn, and this one. And now you can say that this will also go away. So you have two pawn advantage against a rook. This is a theoretical win for white. So that is, you will come across a lot of theory in this ending, and normally players cannot play on this kind of ending. You can practice at home that two pawns against rook versus like rook and king, and that will be a win for white. So Boleslavsky cannot afford that to have this variation. Okay, rook e1. And so, seeing that Botvinnik also threatens rook e7, first he protects the g7 pawn with rook g8. Good defense by Boleslavsky. As you know, Boleslavsky is also a very good player. We had seen one of his games, right? Now, Botvinnik places on the second favorite square, that is rook to e6. So sometimes opponent doesn't allow you, but you have to think of plan A, plan B, plan C, all kind of plans you have to throw at him. Okay. So rook not only defends the pass pawn from this horizontal position, it defends the pass pawn, fine, but it is also prepared to help out in attacks on black's king side pawn. No? So all these attacks will come on black king side pawn. Uh, and so black's king and rook on the other hand are separated. Like one is here, another is here, and they have been reduced to defensive function. This king is just a watcher of this pawn. This rook is a watcher of this pawn. So that's what they are up to. The only move, he cannot move is now the rooks. He cannot move his pawn. If he moves his pawn, then Botvinnik's king will come from here. All right. And if he moves his this pawn, Botvinnik king will come from this way. He will come inside, right? And he will put more pressure here. So he cannot afford to move any of his pawn. He cannot move and afford any of his rook. The only move he has is putting this move. This move, like he cannot still play, but we cannot still play b7 because he can hit still. So black will eventually have been reduced to just one move, like putting the king back and forth from here to here. Because if you go inside, then what did Botvinnik do? He will just put the rook on seventh rank, right? And he will further be strangled. Black will further be strangled.
Yeah.
Next, you there? Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah. So that's why black is just reduced to this move. Now Botvinnik goes near to the pawn further. Slowly, he's coming near. And black has only one move. He places it here. Now you have to get the breakthrough. How will you get it? By using your own pawn. He will play h4. Black only has one move. h5. Only one move. Make use of both of your pawns. Play g4. Try to come near to those pawns. No? One more. Same. Now he comes here. One more. And now Botvinnik achieves the breakthrough with h6.
That's it.
Yeah. He now threatens that I will break your pawn structure. Now let's see what will happen if he ignores and plays g6. If he plays g6, then Botvinnik has the same idea. Rook to e7. He has to take. King takes pawn. Rook takes pawn. Now black king hurriedly comes here, but it is too late. Botvinnik can come here. Let's say black tries to attack, but that is also too late. Now this is a win for white. Two pawns, that two advanced pawns with a rook against rook. That is a theoretical win for white. That is the reason he cannot play this move. Okay, so what he does is that he takes the pawn, and Botvinnik also takes the pawn and puts pressure on the h7 pawn. Boleslavsky secures the h7 pawn by playing rook g7. Botvinnik further comes near to the pawn. Okay, and there is one more reason, like uh, what was the reason? Yeah, I will show you that reason later. Anyway, maybe I think we have, yeah, king h5. So yeah, so he goes back again, king rook 3, and Boleslavsky doesn't want to allow the king to come out of here, so he wants that the rook should remain here, and he cannot move his pawn. So the only move he has left is this move. Okay, uh,
Yes.
yeah. So let's assume that if he had allowed, then what would have happened? Then this Dotwinic could have played rook to e6, and if he had come back, and now he could have played e5, right? And this would have been good for black. Let's say, sorry, white. Then you say a6, come once more again. So now you see why the king was moving further ahead and ahead. It is always good to have an active king. Let's say he places the queen rook here. And now let's go from here. Like let him take the pawn, like what Botvinnik mentioned, and then now come here, you know, and take this pawn, and then this will be a win
Hmm.
for white. Like
White.
it's called
White. White.
simplicity. Why to complicate matters? Like you are winning simply, right? So that is
True.
the way one should think when in the end game. Like try to win simply. So king a6. After king a6, so naturally he played king a6. He didn't play rook f7. So he played king a6, and Botvinnik played rook to c6. Now here the idea is like black was going back and forth here. So now if he comes here, then I have this, right? Let's say rook takes rook, pawn takes rook, king takes pawn, and now this is winning for white, right?
True. Yeah.
That is the reason after rook c6, he didn't attempted to play king to b7 again. He played the move here. Now, if he had played this move, that means that he had left this one, right?
Hmm.
But when you get further things also, like he teased the rook even further, taking advantage of this pawn. He just places this rook to c7. Alright, he cannot take, because that will also be like, okay, all right, this pawn will be gone, but still white can easily win this ending, which is like eating this pawn and just promoting your own pawn. There is nobody to stop because white reaches at hold of this square first, then black. So
True.
better will be to give a check. Pawn to g5. Now if king takes pawn, rook takes pawn. It's a king c6. So yeah, we have this as a main variation. Played rook e7, he then played king b7, fine. Rook c7, rook e5, g5, king. Okay. So now you are like one pawn up. So you can play king to h6, king to d6, pawn to knight 6, He goes back, like he wants to put a rook ahead, but Botvinnik plays the correct move, rook b7. Also, this move won't allow the black to come in this diagonal, e7. So he anyway takes this because he cannot now play this move because of this attack on the rook. So Botvinnik will have to like just cut off the king from this square, and now the black king cannot come here. Right.
हाँ जी.
Okay, sorry. I think I make one mistake. He didn't went rook e8. He actually went here. Here, rook e1. Okay, rook e8 is a wrong. Delete this variation. Rook e1. Okay, so he wants to give a check from here. So Botvinnik places here so that the king cannot come there. Even if he comes, then he can put the rook here, and now the king cannot further move ahead. So he gives a waiting move. Alright, uh, so there was actually no sense of even giving a check or something. He gives a waiting move, and black further, white further moves the pawn ahead. Now he gives a check, thinking that now white is not able to save the from his checks. So that is the reason he was waiting the waiting move. Okay, let's say now from here, then also check. If here, then also it is a check. So and now if now here, he can put here. So if he comes out, then he will give a check. Now, now this is a in theory, this is the win. It's called Lucena position. You know about Lucena position, Niksha?
You might have to remind me.
Okay, so I will show you. Let's say, first of all, the first thing that you have to do is the this king, and this file, where the rook is, there should be a uh, that, that the king should be on this file. That is the reason. Now I have to give a check. Now let's say black comes here, then white has this move as the win, because even if he places it here, this will be a victory for white. So he cannot put it here. So this is straight away losing for black. Do you see any way to save black? Even if
No.
black comes here, okay, and still he can put a queen, because this is also saving black, saving the white, and winning for white actually, not saving. All right. So black has only one way to go, and that is through king knight 6. So what did he played? Rook b2, pawn knight 7, knight 6. Okay, now he is here on move number 63. Okay, so that is the reason he didn't went here. He had to go here. Okay, and now we build a bridge, the Lucena Bridge, it is called, right? So we place the rook here, rook to e4. All right. Now this king will come out, and it will like this rook will help to solve all these checks. So black plays a waiting move, and now king b7, king to sorry f7, and now you can say uh, now uh, now let's you play black next time. What you will do? like to prevent white from queening. You will do some checks, right?
Yeah, other than checks, I don't think so I can.
Yeah, rook f7. So I will put it here. Then now what you will do?
I can go G2 again.
I will come here. So now I'm not coming back here. I'm going on f6. So there is some progress here now.
If I go F2 again, you will go E5, most probably.
Go to. Okay.
F2
Now
if
let's say
I
you
go
make a
to.
waiting move. Fine. I will
Hmm,
build the bridge one more square up.
yeah,
Right. So now if you place it here, I will place here, and then also I will shield myself from all the checks. And this is winning. Now you can't do anything. You cannot prevent the queen to get mated. Queening of the pawn. You cannot do that, right? So this is the Lucena position. What we reach here, the Lucena position, right? And this is a theoretical
yes,
win. King f6 is a mistake. He has to play king to 7, but still white will still win. Rook f10, h2, f7, rook f2, king g6, rook g2, king f6. Now you played a waiting move, but let's say he gives another check, right? And so after giving another check, he will put his king here. Now if you give again another check, then you will put a rook here, and this is also winning. Black cannot prevent the queen from happening. So this is how Botvinnik won against Isaac Boleslavsky in Moscow tournament 1951. So I hope Nixon you like the game.
yes, very much. Thank you.
Yeah. And if you see the game recap of the game, like Botvinnik made some small advantages. Yeah. So after the opening, he made he first played this move, you know, and then he readily accepted pawn, but in order to make a base on c5 and d4, and afterwards he established both his knight on c5 and d4 and established more control on the dark squares. Now this allowed actually one more thing that he put more pressure on the rook e8, and there were many variations. Like now you see a player like Botvinnik, before taking any action in the center, he played this move, king h1. He doesn't want any surprises. Like we could have thought about, okay, let me put my knight here, or I can play this, or nothing doing. First, he uh, places the king out of danger, and then he initiates the all this action in the center. Other moves have their consequences, like this, and bishop h5, like it had this. So, and rook d5. What rook d5 did? Uh, rook d5 had. Yeah, rook d5 was simply rook takes bishop, and he cannot take. So that is also in for black. So many things can go wrong in such positions. You have to play the precise move. Anyway, he played this move, but there was another combination which Botvinnik played here, and he tried to take hold of the position, but another combination came, and that was not a combination. Maybe some way to just simplify the position further. After queen d8, e8, and so after all this, he came one pawn up, and then afterwards all this rook and endgame started. and this all it was started. So I really like the way by which Botvinnik transferred his rook from b1 to e6. That is really novelty. Then he further moved his pawns ahead. He achieved a breakthrough. Then he further moved ahead. Now this part of also I liked where Botvinnik you know teases the rook to go some other place, and that is how he simplifies the position even further by giving up his b pawn for the exchange of h7 pawn, and then he further moves ahead and he obtains a theoretical win position by Lucena. This is the Lucena position. This we entered the Lucena position. So here only when this happened, this was Lucena. Like after this, like you will find it in many textbooks, Lucena position, right? So Nikshan, I'd given one homework to you on Lucena position. I hope you had did that. Otherwise, I am like surprised
I
why you
was
are surprised. If you had
I
done the
was
homework,
sick
you
half
will have
of
not been
the
surprised.
I
Okay.
have been sick half of the week, so I have not done
Okay. I'm stopping the stream now. Should I stop it from here only, right? Or from there?
it. End stream here.
End stream, right? Okay.